In an unprecedented turn of events, the son of former President Donald Trump, Barron Trump, found himself at the center of a storm that no one saw coming. The scene unfolded in the heart of New York City, where Barron, a relatively private figure, decided to venture into the trendy, liberal-leaning restaurant, Green Leaf Bistro. Known for its politically charged atmosphere and ultra-progressive clientele, the bistro was the last place anyone would expect such a dramatic confrontation. But that's exactly what happened. As Barron walked through the door, a tense silence filled the room. The staff, already informed of his identity, immediately took action, the kind of action that would spark outrage across the nation. They refused him service. But what Barron did next was a plot twist that no one could have predicted. As cameras flashed, capturing the unexpected scene, Barron's response left everyone stunned. He didn't walk away. Instead, he sat down, ordered a meal, and sent the restaurant into a state of chaos.
Why?
Because Barron Trump wasn't about to let this insult slide. He had a bigger, more shocking plan in mind. This wasn't just about a snub in a restaurant, it was about sending a message. And that message, well, it was one that would leave the nation reeling and talking for weeks to come. The story begins with Barron Trump, the youngest son of former President Donald Trump, walking into the Green Leaf Bistro, a restaurant renowned for its strong political stance. Tucked away in the heart of Manhattan, the restaurant has a reputation for being a progressive, liberal gathering spot, one where political debates and protests are as much a part of the ambience as the plant-based dishes on the menu. Patrons are often seen sporting T-shirts with political slogans or engaging in spirited discussions about the state of the nation. What makes the place even more interesting is the staff, who are equally politically vocal and enthusiastic about their beliefs. So, when Barron Trump, who has mostly kept out of the public eye, entered the bistro that afternoon, it was bound to stir the pot. As soon as Barron walked through the door, a hushed silence swept across the room. Eyes widened. Some patrons even stood still, unsure of how to react to the surprise guest. For many, seeing Barron Trump, who had rarely been in the public spotlight, was a spectacle in itself. But it didn't take long for the tension to escalate. The manager, a passionate activist with a reputation for making political statements, recognized Barron immediately. And what happened next was nothing short of shocking. Without any hesitation, the manager approached Barron and, in front of the entire restaurant, politely but firmly informed him that he would not be served. According to the manager, the decision was based on Barron's association with the Trump family, particularly his father, whose controversial political views had sparked nationwide protests, debates, and division. The manager explained that they could not, in good conscience, serve someone linked to what they considered a harmful political ideology. The room fell into an eerie silence, as patrons waited with bated breath to see how Barron would respond. Some exchanged glances, expecting an outburst, or perhaps some kind of confrontation. But what happened next was not what anyone expected. Rather than storming out in anger or creating a scene, Barron sat down quietly at an empty table in the middle of the restaurant. His calm, unflappable demeanor only added to the tension in the room. He didn't raise his voice or react in the way most would have anticipated. Instead, he made eye contact with the manager and ordered a meal, as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. This wasn't just an act of defiance, it was a statement. The staff, visibly flustered, tried to reason with him. They suggested he leave, but Barron simply held up his hand, signaling for them to stop. He ordered a simple dish, a vegetable-based entree, nothing extravagant. All the while, the other diners watched, some filming the scene, while others murmured amongst themselves, unsure of how to process what was happening. As Barron waited for his meal, the restaurant descended into chaos. Some patrons expressed their support for Barron's decision to remain seated, while others whispered that he should leave, claiming his very presence undermined the values of the restaurant. But Barron, in his quiet and calculated way, remained unbothered, refusing to give anyone the satisfaction of an emotional reaction. The restaurant staff was left scrambling, not knowing whether to escalate the situation or back down. But what shocked the nation wasn't the fact that Barron sat there undisturbed, it was the way he handled the situation in the end. As soon as the meal arrived, Barron paid for it, leaving a generous tip, despite the tension. He then stood up, calmly walked to the door, and turned to address the entire room. With a calm yet powerful voice, Barron made a brief statement that caught everyone off guard. The problem isn't me sitting here, it's the fact that we can't even have a conversation anymore. If we can't disagree without refusing to break bread together, then we've already lost. And with that, Barron Trump, the son of the most divisive president in recent history, left the restaurant. The nation was left in shock. Social media exploded, with people on all sides weighing in. Supporters of Barron praised him for his maturity and composure in the face of adversity, while critics accused him of trying to play the victim in a situation he had caused. News outlets across the country began discussing the implications of this event, questioning whether this was a new form of political protest or simply another attempt to gain sympathy. But Barron's actions didn't end there. The following day, he released a statement through his social media accounts, calling for a return to civility in political discourse. He didn't call for boycotts or protests, nor did he lash out at the restaurant. Instead, Barron urged people on both sides of the political spectrum to find common ground, to have difficult conversations, and to remember that no one person or family should be the target of outright exclusion. His words were measured, thoughtful, and, most notably, devoid of any hint of the bitterness that so often permeates today's political climate. Barron's actions, in many ways, marked the beginning of a new era in political discourse, one where even the most unexpected figures can challenge the status quo. His move didn't just shock the nation, it set a precedent for how we, as a society, should handle disagreements and divisive issues. In a world where polarization reigns, Barron Trump's quiet, yet firm stand sent a clear message. We can disagree, but we can still engage with one another. And sometimes, that's the most powerful form of resistance there is. As the nation processed the unexpected turn of events, Barron Trump's quiet yet powerful response continued to dominate headlines. His single act of defiance in the face of political exclusion had triggered a wave of debates, from social media posts to op-eds in major newspapers. The story quickly went from a New York City bistro incident to a nationwide conversation on civility, political polarization, and the power of a measured response. But the full impact of Barron's actions wasn't fully realized until days later, when the restaurant itself became embroiled in a crisis of its own making. The backlash against the bistro began almost immediately after Barron's departure. Patrons, many of whom had been there that day, shared their own experiences with the restaurant's behavior, sparking outrage. People from all walks of life, liberals, conservatives, and independents alike, began to question the restaurant's decision to refuse service based on political beliefs. The conversation quickly shifted from Barron's actions to the very idea of political exclusion. Some argued that the restaurant had overstepped its bounds, while others questioned whether this was part of a larger trend in which individuals are now judged solely by their political affiliations, rather than the content of their character. As protests and debates ignited across the country, Barron remained eerily silent. His refusal to engage in the media frenzy only added to the intrigue surrounding him. But behind the scenes, Barron had been quietly working with his team to make a larger statement. The Trump family, known for its business empire and political influence, wasn't going to let this go unnoticed. Barron had a plan, and it would take the form of a nationwide initiative aimed at promoting political dialogue and civility. The culmination of Barron's response came when he launched a new foundation, the Common Ground Initiative, dedicated to creating safe spaces for political discussion and collaboration. The foundation's mission was simple: to bring people from all political walks together for civil dialogue, with the goal of finding common ground on issues that divided the nation. The launch event, held in Washington, D.C., was a star-studded affair, attracting both political figures from across the spectrum and ordinary citizens who had been inspired by Barron's call for unity. At the event, Barron spoke passionately about the need for civility in an age where political polarization has reached an all-time high. His words were measured, empathetic, and, most importantly, inclusive, urging everyone to participate, regardless of their political views. The launch of the foundation sent shockwaves through the media. It was a move few expected from Barron Trump, who had long been seen as a quiet figure, often overshadowed by the personalities of his father and older siblings. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Critics who had once dismissed Barron as an aloof, uninvolved figure in the Trump family now had to take him seriously. His foundation became a lightning rod for conversations on how to address political division in the country. For once, Barron wasn't simply the son of a former president, he was leading a movement. As Barron's initiative gained traction, the Green Leaf Bistro found itself under intense scrutiny. Within a week of the foundation's launch, the restaurant's owner issued a public apology, acknowledging the decision to refuse Barron had been a mistake and a poor reflection of their values. The apology, however, was met with mixed reactions. Some saw it as a genuine attempt at reconciliation, while others deemed it an attempt to save face in the wake of the backlash. Regardless, Barron's quiet persistence had forced a powerful institution to acknowledge its wrongs, and that, in itself, was a victory. By the end of the month, Barron Trump had not only managed to turn a simple restaurant rejection into a national conversation, but had also positioned himself as a leader in the movement to bridge America's political divide. His actions, both subtle and deliberate, had sparked a conversation that transcended partisan politics. Barron had shown that sometimes the most powerful way to challenge the status quo is not through confrontation or anger, but through calm, reasoned actions that leave a lasting impact. In the final moments of the saga, Barron was seen publicly engaging with both conservative and liberal figures, encouraging them to attend forums and events hosted by his new foundation. Whether he had anticipated such an outpouring of support and controversy is unclear, but one thing was certain: Barron Trump had taken a stand, and his influence, once confined to the shadows of his family, had now emerged as a force to be reckoned with. The nation was left with a new perspective on the Trump family's youngest member. No longer just the son of a controversial president, Barron had emerged as a voice for the future, a voice of reason, civility, and a call for unity in a fractured world. In the end, Barron Trump's actions sent a message far beyond the immediate controversy. It wasn't about the bistro, the refusal, or even the political ideologies that had sparked such a public outcry. No, it was about the power of dignity in the face of adversity, and the strength of choosing peace over provocation. Barron could have easily fallen into the trap of fighting fire with fire. He could have lashed out, made the incident about revenge or anger. But instead, he chose the higher path, one of quiet resilience and constructive action. The world we live in is often divided by sharp lines, whether political, social, or cultural. It's easy to become entrenched in our own views, to see those who disagree with us as adversaries rather than fellow humans. But Barron's response, an invitation to engage in dialogue, not conflict, reminds us that we all have a role to play in bridging these divides. His story is a call to action for anyone who feels overwhelmed by the current state of the world. It's a reminder that we are all capable of change, no matter how small our actions may seem. Barron's foundation, the Common Ground Initiative, was more than just a response to a personal incident. It became a movement. A movement that encourages every individual, regardless of their background or beliefs, to find common ground. To listen more, speak thoughtfully, and act with compassion. Because in the end, it's not about being right. It's about building connections, understanding, and creating a better world together. So, as we reflect on Barron's story, let it inspire us. Let it remind us that no matter the challenges we face, we can always choose how we respond. We can choose kindness, we can choose dialogue, and most importantly, we can choose to make a difference. Because when we rise above the noise, when we act with integrity, we are not just changing the course of a single moment, we are shaping the future, one thoughtful action at a time.